The night the hood learned your name, the first thing you notice in the executioner's cottage is the smell, not of blood, although that's folded quietly into the rafters like forgotten laundry, but of beeswax, damp velvet, and a peculiar anxiety that crackles in the hearth instead of firewood. You are here as an apprentice chronicler, recommended by a scribe who hates you, charged to record why medieval executioners command more dread than kings. Kings, after all, can only order a death. The man under this roof measures it, sharpens it, polishes it, makes it ring like a cathedral bell. Before we sharpen any metaphors, indulge a small ritual, purely professional courtesy. If my steady scribbling and gentle droning ease the rattling of your midnight thoughts, take a moment to tap whatever sigil counts as a like, perhaps even swear fealty via subscription. In the margin below, tell me where you have tuned in from and which hour ticks on the clock beside your bed. Mapping the sleepless is my favorite cartography. Now, dim the candles, maybe let a fan purr for that soft background hum, and join me as we slip into tonight's tangle of rope and royalty. You sit on a three-legged stool, quill poised, while Master Roderick, the most feared headsman in 3 provinces, laces his boots with the calm of a monk threading prayer beads. His hood rests on a mannequin in the corner, black leather, eye holes rimmed with iron rings, so sweat can't warp the cut. It looks at you though it hasn't any eyes, and you suddenly understand why children here whisper that if the hood learns your name, your pillow will sprout nettles before dawn. Roderick's cottage crouches just beyond the city palisade, neither in nor out, like a punctuation mark civilization forgot how to read. Kings reside in marble halls lit by chandeliers. Roderick works in a room lit by a single lantern whose glass is smudged by fingerprints that never quite wash off. On the oak table, grindstone, whetstone, bone-handled blades, named, for bookkeeping, mercy and tithing, hanging from a peg, a length of hemp thicker than a man's thumb, already braided into an eloquent slipknot. Kings sign decrees. Roderick ties punctuation. He clears his throat, a sound like boots on gravel, and asks whether you fancy tea. You decline, not trusting any liquid steeped within these walls. He chuckles, pours himself a mug anyway, and the steam smells faintly of mint and melancholy. You wonder why they fear us more than sovereigns, he says, as if reading notes before you write them. Kings rule days. We rule minutes. The quill trembles. Ink spatters. He smiles behind his mug, because trembling is the appropriate response. Outside, the evening bell tolls 8, dull bronze echoing across rooftops. Each toll is a countdown for someone. Perhaps the condemned in the castle jail. Perhaps the butcher's boy who sold watered ale. Perhaps the treasurer who misplaced a decimal and must now pay in flesh. You ask Roderick if he sleeps well. He considers. I sleep like bread dough. Sometimes I rise. The hood on the mannequin tilts of its own accord, either a draft or a joke older than gallows. He invites you to accompany him on tonight's errand, to measure the block, test the rope, instruct the bell ringer on the appropriate cadence. Kings rarely attend such rehearsals. They prefer proclamations at sunrise. Executioners, however, perform their craft at dawn's ragged edge, when fog can soak shrieks before the populace hears. Roderick hands you a lantern. Its flame gutters at first. Nervous, the path to the scaffold winds through frost-bitten gardens, where roses grow only in shades of confession. Guards at the jail entrance salute Roderick quicker than they would bow to a prince. Fear doesn't require protocol, just reflex. One whispers, "Your Eminence," a title no king would tolerate, yet none can revoke. Roderick ignores the flattery. He is neither noble nor knight, but something perpendicular to both, a man whose authority is carved from inevitability. Inside the courtyard stands the scaffold, fresh timber, still bleeding sap like open scripture. The block, dark walnut, bears grooves from previous chapters. You set the lantern down. Its glow crawls across the grain, revealing tiny rivers of soaked-in crimson. Roderick runs a fingertip over the surface, assessing for splinters. A bad block whispers splinters into the wound, makes the journey longer. He sounds genuinely concerned, like a tailor fretting over an ill-stitched hem. He uncoils the rope, tests knot tension with surgeon precision. Your stomach flips as you realize he's humming a lullaby. Hush thee, nightingale. Hush. You jot this sensory contradiction. Label it Exhibit A. Executioners lullaby themselves. Kings require trumpets. Next, he inspects the blade. Under lantern glare, mercy gleams. He lifts it to your throat, not touching, merely aligning the edge with the vein, and watches ink dry in your quill. Sharp enough to shave a howl in half, he remarks, pleased. Your notes say, your pulse turns traitor. Roderick's apprentice, a broad lad named Gervais, arrives carrying sanding cloth. He grins like a man, confident municipal dread will one day bear his nameplate. Apprentices to kings train with swords on straw dummies. Apprentices to headsmen train with silence and sanding blocks. Gervais sands the edges of the block until you can't tell where wood ends and memory begins. The prison doors open. Warder presents tomorrow's client, a merchant caught minting counterfeit coins. He's led to scaffold for familiarity. His knees buckle. Roderick steadies him, kindly almost, adjusting where his neck should rest come dawn. Comfort matters, Roderick murmurs. Exhibit B. Executioners offer ergonomic advice. Kings delegate dread. The merchant begs to see the king, claiming a royal pardon will arrive. Roderick listens, thumb stroking knot fibers, and answers with polite regret. Kings sign parchment. I sign endings. The merchant sobs. Roderick gestures Gervais to return him to cell. You scribble. Authority feels coldest when it apologizes sincerely. As they escort prisoner away, you ask Roderick if he ever doubts verdicts. He wipes blade on linen. Thoughtful. Kings doubt and call it philosophy. I doubt and call it tomorrow. He tells a story. Once he stayed his hand because a prisoner's hymn cracked his heart. The town rioted for clemency. The king relented. Plague struck, blaming mercy. The townsfolk hanged Roderick in effigy. Fear, lad, he says. Wears my hood better than I do. Back at the cottage, he invites you to sleep on straw pallet. The hood still leers from corner. In lantern shadow, it seems to breathe. You ask why he keeps it displayed instead of locked away. He explains, kings hide crowns when sleeping, but I let the hood watch dreams. Reminds them who belongs to whom. You do not want to know who them refers to. Sleep ambushes you, poorly armed. Dreams merge hood with crown. A king kneels before Roderick asking for mercy, but mercy is the blade and denies interview. You wake before dawn at faint knock. Roderick readies cloak. Gervais sharpens resolve. He offers you choice, witness or distance. Your quill chooses witness. Fog smothers the yard. Spectators gather. Less crowd, more theater troupe. Missing a playbill. The king's envoy arrives, scroll in hand, purely ceremonial. The condemned merchant ascends. Roderick speaks softly, places token beneath block. A sprig of rosemary for remembrance lavender for sleep. Kings rarely remember to scent deaths. Blade falls. History edits itself in one stroke. No cheering. Crowd fears angering the man who ended a life cleaner than most barbers manage a shave. Roderick wipes blade, bows to inevitability. Envoy records deed, nods as though signing a ballot. Later, back in cottage, Roderick pours 2 mugs of mint melancholy tea. He raises his hood to meet your gaze. Eye holes empty, yet full. Write your king's decrees, he says, but write my tea recipe too. Folk should know dread is brewed slowly. You nod, quill scratching final note. Executioners teach that death is personal. Kings teach it as policy. The sun climbs, peeling fog off roofs. Somewhere a king wakes to breakfast, delivered under silver dome. Somewhere Master Roderick sharpens mercy against tomorrow's syllables. And somewhere you place quill down, extinguish lantern, and whisper to listening darkness that fear wears many crowns, but only one hood. Close your eyes, gentle reader. Let the beeswax and velvet linger. May your dreams stride quieter than boots on gravel. And may any hood that learns your name decide you taste too much of ink to bother haunting the king's breakfast, the widow's petition, and the laughter that got lost on the way to the scaffold. The rooster at the royal kennels crows in Latin, Gallus galat, because the court linguist thought it tasteful to teach poultry declensions. You transcribe the echo from an alcove overlooking the palace courtyard while waiting for the sun to finish gilding the crenellations. King Aldrich IV, potentate of sumptuous titles and occasional second thoughts, stands at a mullioned window in quilted dressing gown, watching servants set out breakfast beneath a silk awning. Only 3 hours have passed since Master Roderick's blade completed its moonlit signature on the merchant's neck. Yet here is dawn, prim as an accountant, balancing yesterday's terror against today's appetite. A footman arranges the morning spread with surgical exactness. Oat porridge, blessed by the Archbishop, quince marmalade from Crusader estates, and an omelet whipped so airy it hovers indecisively before settling on a plate chased with gold leaf. The king tastes, frowns, too much nutmeg apparently, and waves for a replacement. No one mentions the condemned man or the crowd's silent flinch. Kings have retinues to sterilize memory the way surgeons cauterize wounds. You hover just beyond hearing, quill and notebook concealed in robe sleeve, because scribes earn longevity by blending into drapery. The king's chamberlain, Lord Wickram, rustles onto the terrace with a ledger of appointments. Majesty, petitions begin at terse. A widow seeks redress, a tanner begs tariff relief, and the Guild of Jesters requests audience concerning proper giggle privileges. Aldrich, choose toast. Move the jesters after supper. Laughter sits awkwardly before noon. The widow's name, Lady Male, spouse to the late merchant you watched rehearse his own ending, is written in pea green ink, smudged as though the clerk's conscience perspired. Aldrich sighs. Another plea against the axe? Wickram coughs. Likely, but protocol demands we hear her. The king nods, staring across lawns toward the executioner's cottage, just visible beyond walls. His gaze contains more arithmetic than guilt. Bodies and taxes, risks and riots. At terse, the throne room smells of beeswax and trepidation. Courtiers file along colonnades like chess pieces in pastel brocade. The widow enters swathed in mourning violet, flanked by 2 pale children, holding a small wooden coffer. She kneels. Her dress creases, like imploded paper birds. You note every twitch, fingers clenched so hard crescents form in skin, eyes bright not with tears, but something hotter, perhaps purpose. Your Majesty, she begins, voice steady enough to shelf porcelain on. My husband's blood fed the block this dawn. I seek indulgence from death's arrears. Courtiers murmur. Indulgence implies trade. Aldrich sips wine, motions her to continue. She lifts the coffer. Inside rests a single silver coin, counterfeit, unfinished, flaw visible as a scar. He minted this in error, she admits, not to profit, but to protest levies, choking honest trade. She offers coin on velvet. I ask that his workshop serve the crown henceforth, striking medallions of mercy sold to fund hospitals for orphans of your justice. Whispers flicker round hall to monetize clemency, radical tenderness, or cunning treason. The king balances coin on fingertip, studying imperfection. What value does mercy hold, Lady Mael? She meets gaze. Enough that people fear the hood more than your crown. Sell them proof. Kindness circulates too, and fear must choose between lenders. Chamberlain's quill hovers, unsure how to punctuate that. Aldrich taps armrest. His council of graybeards exchange opinions via eyebrow semaphore. Finally, he replies, mercy is minted seldom, lest debasement follow. Yet I grant you audience with the mint master. Convince him, and I shall license limited strikes. Applause skitters politely. Decision postpones, rather than solves. Lady Mael bows, eyes flaring like lantern trims. Children clutch hem, half relief, half new dread. You follow at discreet distance, as steward escorts them from throne room into lesser corridor, lined with heresies of historical executions. Needlework heads roll in eternal slow-mo. The widow pauses before one panel depicting Roderick's predecessor lifting an axe. She touches embroidered blade, whispers something about edges remembering. Her children mimic, small fingers blessing cruelty into context. You scribble. Fear multiplies by inheritance. Mercy must too. That afternoon, you accompany King Aldrich on progress through garden parterre to inspect the menagerie's newest curiosity, a lynx trained to detect counterfeit perfume. Superstition claims such beasts smell guilt in fragrance adulterated with cheap musk. The trainer demonstrates. Lynx snarls at flask, forged by black market perfumer. Courtiers applaud. Danger packaged as entertainment. You note the juxtaposition. Beasts policing fakery beside a monarch weighing faux coins for benevolence. Later, in Privy Council, nobles debate whether Roderick's efficiency risks dulling public respect. A populace, without spectacle, may challenge taxes. One baron suggests slower deaths. Another advocates festivals celebrating the axe's holiness. Aldrich listens, swirling wine, and murmurs, when steel wearies, we sharpen story. Your quill scratches. Executioners feared more than kings, because kings outsource narrative to the hood. Evening drapes corridors. Torches crown themselves with restless flame. You return to the executioner's cottage, bearing sealed parchment. The king summons Roderick tomorrow to discuss pacing of punishments. Public relations, essentially. You knock. Gervais opens, shirt flecked with sawdust. Inside, Roderick stands polishing mercy, with cloth damp from crimson water. He reads summons, sighs like wood settling. They want drama, he says, but drama waits under every mask. Lift it too often, it bites. You relay Lady Mael's plea. Something flickers behind hood eye holes. Compassion? Nostalgia? He dips blade, checks edge. I knew the merchant. He laughed at Gallows' rehearsal. Nervous, but brave. Laughter rarely survives here. He sheaths blade, pours 2 mugs of tea, mint and melancholy, undiluted. You sip. Bitterness laces tongue. Memory of morning still roosting. Cottage door knocks again. Lady Mayel herself. Cloak dusted with moonflake. Gervais hesitates. Roderick waves entry. Widow holds a ledger, bound in leather, worn by sleepless nights. My husband catalogued overcharges by the Royal Mint, she says, placing ledger beside weapons. He forged 1 coin to show defect. For that, you did your duty. Her voice neither accuses nor forgives. She opens book. Figures list corrupt surcharges. Names of officials. If mercy is minted, let it stamp out rot first. Roderick closes ledger gently. You trust me? She shrugs. Kings heed steel over supplication. Silence stretches tight as hemp. Finally, he promises to present ledger during audience. Evidence that heads might roll higher up. She exhales, shoulders shedding months of siege. You witness alliance between hood and grief. Unlikely mint for justice. After she departs, Roderick turns to you. Scribe, tomorrow, write truth sharper than mercy. If king ignores ledger, fear of me may tilt throne. You swallow. A revolution? He chuckles without mirth. Merely recalibration. Executioners are scales. Kings supply weights. Night deepens. You borrow straw pallet again. Hood still watching dreams. In sleep, you see guillotines apologizing. Lightning jars bargaining. Children spinning counterfeit laughter into gold. When dawn peels eyelids, you know Chapter 2's lesson. Kings reign by decree, but executioners edit final drafts. Red pen dipped in hearts, and a widow's ledger can tip even a sharpened scale if someone dares record its numbers. Tomorrow's quill will test courage. For now, douse candle, let hood fade to silhouette, and listen to the quiet where minted mercy and measured dread exchange rates under your pillow. The ledger crosses the throne, and the hood finds its reflection in a looking-glass crown. Dawn's horn-rimmed light filters through the palace's arrow slits, gilding every mote of dust like a slow cascade of guilty confessions. In the antechamber, outside the hall of petitioners, you stand beside Master Roderick and his apprentice Gervais. All 3 of you, arrayed like punctuation, around the sealed leather ledger clutched to Roderick's chest. Beneath the executioner's hood, his breathing sounds even, measured in the same unhurried beats he uses to gauge the fall of a blade. Courtiers drift past, skirts rasping, eyes skittering away as though the hood might memorize their faces and schedule them for some dawn not yet inked on the royal calendar. Kings tolerate fear. Executioners cultivate it like monks cultivate herbs, clipping a sprig here, a shadow there, steeping both in silence until potent. The herald swings the great doors open, announcing Master Headsman Roderick, summoned for matters of public gravity. Echoes tremble along gilded ribs of the vaulted ceiling. Gervais stays behind, smoothing tunic as though sanding invisible splinters. The hooded man steps forward, ledger balanced on forearms like an offertory plate. You follow, quill poised, inkpot sealed tight against tremor. Beyond threshold waits King Aldrich IV, seated upon a throne of walnut carved with lions who look decidedly underfed. He wears a circlet today instead of full crown, lighter, easier to tilt when weighing mortal questions. To his left, Lord Wickram, ledger of appointments folded like a weapon. To his right, Mint Master Sergel, robe spattered gold from furnace slag, clustered along wall, an envoy of jesters in somber motley. here early, despite the king's earlier dismissal. Their bells refuse to jingle. Perhaps mirth is contraband until proved harmless. Roderick bows, hood dipping like an eclipse. Aldrich gestures to a dais side table. Set your burden there. When the ledger lands, its clasp sighs. A tiny metallic exhale that sounds almost relieved to rest atop royal parquet. Wickram clears throat. Rehearsed indignation primed. Your Majesty wished discourse on the tempo of justice. Rumors claim swiftness has dulled spectacle. The populace cannot both tremble and pay taxes if deaths pass without theater. He flicks a glance at you, as if blaming ink for decay of fear. Roderick's voice emerges, velvet wrapped around gravel. Sire, fear relies less on tempo than on trust. They trust my acts to fall true, your word to weigh true. When either wavers, blood spills twice, once from the neck, once from the treasury. He unfastens the ledger, revealing columns of figures Lady Mael tallied across sleepless months. Overstruck coins, alloy shortcuts, bribes disguised as candlemaker's fees. A red thread marks totals. The sum gleams like exposed bone. Mintmaster Sergel steps forward, eyes wide enough to candle float. Forgery, sire. Base allegations. Roderick flips a page. Sketches of dies misaligned. Margin notes of who ordered them. Sergel's signature blooms in 3 places. Court murmurs curdle. Jesters exchange looks. Bells twitching like startled fish. Aldrich's knuckles whiten on armrest. Why bring this to me, headsman? Treason trials are Wickram's jurisdiction. Roderick inclines hood. Because a widow asked mercy be minted, and mercy cannot circulate inside counterfeit coffers. Kings may strike fear, but if mint strikes fraud, the axe becomes auditor. His words hang like the blade he left oiled at home. Aldrich signals 2 halberdiers. Sergel sputters, but warders escort him out, echo of boots gnawing marble. The jesters release a collective breath, bells tinkling a minor chord of schadenfreude. Wickram's face stiffens into polite horror. His own signature appears once in ledger, small but legible. He closes appointments folio, so quickly parchment yelps. The king rises, circlet catching dawn. Master Roderick, your counsel cuts keen, yet public nerves already fray. I task you with orchestrating a display, not of death, but of redemption. The crowd shall watch coins reforged, fraud confessed, and mercy struck in silver to finance orphan beds. Your blade will rest until next quarter moon. Gasps ripple. An executioner on holiday unsettles hierarchy. Roderick nods once. Mercy weighs heavier than axe, but I will lift it. He turns to depart. You move with him, but Aldrich halts you with upraised finger. Scribe, remain. The hall empties, save guards and Hood's departing silhouette. The king descends from dais, eyes less sovereign, more sleepless man. I require chroniclers who ink nuance, not propaganda, he says. Fear has served. Now we balance ledgers. Write truth of this transition. Kings will claim foresight later. I prefer honesty now. He hands you discreet scroll, an edict authorizing Lady Mael's mint. Deliver to her, and record her face when parchment outweighs gallows. Outside, you find Roderick under cloister arch, Gervais adjusting rivets on wagon, meant for hauling condemned, but now, by royal pivot, slated to ferry furnace molds. Sunlight slices the yard. Dust motes drift like unprinted tales. He regards you without seeing, perhaps measuring world newly, without scheduled severings. You relay royal request. He chuckles. I sharpened mercy for tomorrow. Now she sulks. He pats hood slung over shoulder. Tell the widow the axe will swing again if mint lies. Steel may nap, but Edge stays awake. With parchment hidden inside robe, you follow Palace Colonnade toward Merchant District, where Lady Mal's workshop sits boarded in grief. A long route, city hum shifts. Word travels quicker than tax collectors. Stonemasons pause chisels. Bakers freeze mid-need. They've sensed horizon tilt. A beggar asks if gallows closed for cleaning. You shrug. Non-committal scribbles best. The workshop door opens on creek thirsty for oil. Sawdust scents mingle with metallic sorrow. Lady Mile hovers over an anvil, reshaping raw discs while her children sort scrap. You present Edict. She scans a seal, lips parting, like curtain letting dawn through. One tear escapes. Anger or relief, you can't tell. So mercy truly mints? She whispers. For a season, you caution. She presses coin blank into your palm, still warm from forge. Keep first strike. Remind throne what hands look like when not bound. Gervais arrives with wagon and Royal Mint officials, formerly Sergel's deputies, now watchful as deer near new stream. They load crucibles, furnace parts, coin dies, newly etched with a sprig of rosemary beside crown. Roderick's suggestion, remembrance and rule, sharing one face. Children climb aboard, giggling at badge on guard's chest, depicting hood and scales interlocked. On your way back toward Palace, you detour through Gallows Square. Scaffold stands empty, block cleaned, but silence heavier than crowds. Two old women gossip about King's soft heart versus executioner's soft threat. A street juggler tosses wooden heads aloft. Misdrops one. Spectators flinch reflexively. Muscle memory of fear ingrained deeper than logic. Dusk descends as mint fires spark alive in former workshop. You remain, quill racing to capture glow on widow's cheeks. Onlookers filing past to trade first copper for first mercy token. When die strikes, clink rings across cobbles, like miniature bells daring jesters to compete. Some citizens cross themselves. Others clutch coin as talisman against tomorrow's summons. Night deepens. You escort ledgers to Roderick's cottage. He sits by hearth, hood hanging restful as sleeping bat. He flips mercy coin you present. Edge flashes. Sharp enough, he nods, slips it into pouch beside whetstone. You realize executioners sheathe more than steel. They sheathe stories until rulers beg for edits. Exhaustion drapes shoulders, yet quill still thirsts. Back in scribe alcove, you ink closing lines. Today, the hood loaned its dread to a mint. The king borrowed a widow's ledger, and a blade discovered patience sharper than iron. Public fear recalibrates at dawn. Sand dries letters, candle gutters. Outside window, palace bells toll curfew. Not fractional, not flourish, just plain 9 strokes solid as new coinage. Somewhere a child flips mercy token under moonlight. Somewhere a forger reconsiders alloy purity. And somewhere, in a cottage beyond palisade, a hood studies lamplight flickering through eye holes. Thinking perhaps that kings are useful after all. Useful for asking steel to teach gentler lessons it has long known but rarely voiced. Sleep now, listener. Let hammers ring, lull heartbeats. Let minted mercy clink across dream streets. And should the hood wander through your slumber, remember, it's merely assessing whether your promises weigh truer than fears. That, tonight, may be enough to keep the blade at rest. Of counterfeit mercy, jesters on strike, and a blade that refused to retire. Quietly, Mercy Day dawns beneath a smother of low clouds, the color of damp parchment. Appropriate decor for a kingdom experimenting with benevolence. In Merchant Square, newly erected stalls glitter with silver crescents, fresh from Lady Mal's resurrected mint, her improvised coining team, former apprentices, orphans too nimble for chimney work, and 2 trembling ex-mint clerks now stamp rosemary-crowned tokens faster than gossip can oxidize. Each coin carries on its rim the phrase, fear balanced in runic shorthand, neat, indecipherable, and therefore authoritative. You have positioned yourself atop a crates tower, notebook balanced on knee, to chronicle the first circulation. Citizens queue in hesitant knots, clutching copper pennies to exchange for slices of royal indulgence. 1 token purchases a loaf at the poorhouse. 2 sponsor a physician's visit. 3 secure a night's lodging without inquisitive curfews. It is, by any economic metric, a miracle, though miracles, like untested bridges, inspire both awe and wagers on collapse. Master Roderick observes from the edge of the square, hood lowered but unmistakable, Gervais hovering at his flank. No axe today, only folded arms and the unsettling serenity of someone who has placed his favorite instrument on a high shelf and is listening to the room without it. Townsfolk recognize him, flinch, then remember the blade is napping. They offer tight nods, half gratitude, half muscle memory of terror. Roderick accepts each acknowledgement with a minute incline of the hood, as if rubber stamping receipts. The jesters arrive next, bells muted by scraps of black cloth, a sartorial protest. Their guildmaster, Motley Hugh, announces a humor strike until the court formalizes giggle privileges. His placard reads, "No laughs, no taxes." The jesters parade silently, miming shackled wrists and padlocked mouths. The crowd, primed for novelty, chuckles despite the embargo. The jesters glare, offended at unpaid laughter. Lord Wickram storms in, brocade swirling like a moral dust devil. He demands jesters desist lest they dampen public spirits the king so carefully inflates. Motley Hugh produces a handbill, royal decree scheduling their audience at after supper, which Aldrich again postponed. Wickram tears paper, confetti drifting like unscheduled snow. The jesters bow, strike concluded, humor repossessed. Into this carnival of unsettled goodwill steps a lean figure in scholar's robes. Master Caldus, treasurer of the High Nobles Consortium. He inspects a mercy coin, sneers so sharply you can hear enamel protest. He approaches Lady Mael's stall, drops a minted token on scale beside a nugget of raw silver. The scale tips toward raw metal. Mercy lighter. Debased alloy, he proclaims. Charity with too much copper. Whispers ripple. Counterfeit mercy? Roderick's hood tilts, interest piqued. Lady Mael straightens, soot smudging cheek like war paint. She invites Caldus behind stall to witness assay. You follow, quill thirsty. She heats a coin until it glows, hammers it thin, exposes consistent color. Caldus counters by producing a different coin, a fake struck overnight. Rim inscription misspelled, fear balanced. He passes it through crowd. Several tokens and purses match. Panic sniffs the air. Hungry. Roderick steps forward, silent as verdict. He lifts the forged coin, balances it on gloved fingertip, then presses edge against his thumb. Genuine mercy leaves no burr. Counterfeit bites. He raises coin for all to see. False mercy cuts both purse and throat, he intones. People murmur. Phrase destined for tavern murals by nightfall. Mint clerks swear they struck no impure batches. Lady Mael pulls sleeping-deprived ledgers, proving production counts. Suspicion ricochets until landing on jesters. Silence cloth conceals jingle medals. Motley Hugh indignantly jingles a bell, pure brass. Caldus accuses mint clerks of double shifting for thieves. Clerk sputters, points at Caldus's consortium, known for silversmith workshops. Roderick intervenes. Counterfeiting mercy warrants the axe's recall. Gasps at mention of retirement revoked. A hush like pre-storm humidity settles. Wickham, sensing catastrophe, dashes to fetch the king. Merchants shutter stalls, as if wind changed moral direction. You note every pulse. Children gripping rosemary-crowned coins, as though they might sprout absolution roots. Widows weighing fresh doubt. Jesters slyly evaluating comedic mileage in debased hope. Within the hour, King Aldrich arrives. Circlet replaced by full crown. He's dressed for authority, heavier than charity. Rain begins, thin needles stitching gloom to cobblestones. Aldrich ascends a dais, improvised from overturned crates. Who sullies mercy, sullies crown, he declares. Thunder adding punctuation, just late enough to seem sarcastic. He orders immediate inquiry, appoints Roderick chief investigator, a fox guarding henhouse of fear. That evening, the hooded man assembles a task force in the Mint workshop. Lady Male, 2 honest clergymen, Mint apprentice Ida, whose honesty shines like unpolished tin, and surprisingly, Motley Hugh, representing Guild of Jesters. To ensure humor in verdict, Roderick explains with microscopic grin. You, official scribe, perch on barrel labeled NITRE, hoping its volatile contents stay hypothetical. Evidence emerges. Forged dies, hidden beneath monastery wine crates. Alloy ingots stamped with consortium seal. Payroll slip listing Jesters as entertainment for secret nocturnal minting. Hugh protests innocence. His guild scheduled no midnight gig. Ida recalls seeing torches near furnace after curfew. Figures in long robes reciting dog Latin. Too sloppy for monks, too theatrical for smiths. Hugh clarifies. Dog Latin is Jester dialect. Someone impersonated them. Roderick decides to bait counterfeiters. Plan. Circulate a phantom decree, announcing next day a special edition. Gold-washed mercy coin commemorating the king's infinite compassion. Counterfeiters will rush night forgeries to beat market. Gervais volunteers to guard real mint. Roderick prepares Mercy's edge, in case negotiations with metal require louder persuasion. Midnight. You, Roderick, and Lady Mile hide in rafters above mint furnace. Rain drums roof. Shadows knit conspiracies below. 2 figures enter, robes shimmering consortium blue. They carry forged dies. Whisper about gilding process. Mock king's gullibility. As they ignite furnace, Roderick drops silently, hood manifesting like lunar eclipse. His voice echoes steel. Strike mercy again, and meet its keeper. Thieves spin. One draws stiletto. Laugh cracks like cheap porcelain. The other hurls molten crucible contents in arc. Golden spray of betrayal. Roderick ducks, cloak sizzling. You yank Lady Mile back. Forgers flee into alley, but Gervais blocks exit, axe haft across doorway. Thieves skid, colliding with sack of blank coins. Roderick advances. Even without blade unsheathed, dread radiates. They surrender before edge bears. Under torch interrogation, culprits, minor guildsmen bribed by Caldus, confess plan to flood market, crash confidence, justify return of executions to distract populace. Caldus hoped to prove fear's currency safest. Roderick hears, nods once, invisible eyes appraising ratio of treason to folly. At dawn tribunal, Aldrich listens to confession transcripts. You transcribed overnight. Ink still drying. Caldus stripped of titles. Mercy coins mandated as only legal tender for 3 months. Jesters granted exclusive right to audit laughter for counterfeits. Motley Hugh bows dramatically. Bells restored to legal ring volume. Execution dates remain suspended. Roderick files his blade, but places Counterfeit dies on palace steps as museum of hubris. In square, citizens queue again, exchanging copper for verified mercy. Each coin now accompanied by certificate signed with hood stamp. Trust rebuilds, this time hardened by attempted sabotage, like tempered steel, fearsome yet resilient. Later, you sit with Roderick near scaffold. Sunset bleeding rose across timber. Mercy blade rests across his knees, but his hands polish rosemary sprig instead of steel. Strange, he says, to defend life with same dread that once ended it. You answer, perhaps edges know, only purpose we give. He smiles, small, sad. Edges always wait. Rulers come to them eventually. You write final lines of day. Mercy survived its counterfeit because fear lent it guardianship. The hood discovered its silence could roar louder than blade, and laughter, properly taxed, shielded the realm from sharper fraud. Candle sputters, coins chime in pockets. Somewhere jesters rehearse jokes about counterfeit forgiveness. Sleep, listener, under clink of honest silver, and watch of a hood learning patience. Tomorrow's chapter may yet test which currency, mercy or terror, earns the higher interest when kingdoms dream. The king's decree naming Mercy Week a civic holiday reached every hamlet, barn, and roadside gallows by carrier pigeon, which meant half the messages arrived ankle-deep in droppings, but unmistakably official. On the proclamation's first morning, the city bloomed into bunting. Banners painted with rosemary, sprigs draped between tavern signs. Housewives scattered mint-scented sawdust over thresholds, and children practiced a new playground chant. Heads stay on when coins stay true, while hopscotching around chalk outlines of imaginary blocks. You stalked these preparations, with notebook in hand, tallying ironies per street. By midday, the count eclipsed your supply of ink, and you resorted to carving tick marks on the quill's wooden shaft. King Aldrich, newly enamored with pageantry that didn't involve entrails, ordered a festival of balanced ledgers to prove charity could entertain the masses as reliably as a hanging. Market stalls offered forgiveness, fritters, honey cakes stamped with the word pardon, and pardon was literal. For each purchase, canceled a random debtor's overdue grain tithe. The jesters, bells gleaming after their recent audit promotion, patrolled the rows with abacuses strung like bandoliers, logging every giggle, snicker, and snort. Too much laughter earned a luxury humor levy, payable in fresh mercy coins or, failing that, an embarrassing public curtsy. Master Roderick attended as guest of honor, hood polished and brimmed with sprig of rosemary. Gervais carried a velvet cushion upon which rested Mercy, sheathed in a scabbard, sewn shut with gold thread. To reassure toddlers, the blade was on sabbatical. In place of execution, he presided over a beheading contest without a blade, wherein contestants swung broomsticks at cabbages perched atop mannequins. Each cabbage bore a counterfeit coin embedded in its core. A clean strike that expelled the forgery won its wielder a legitimate silver token. When Roderick announced the rules, his voice rustled through the crowd like wind through straw figures. Every spine straightened in reflex, even though terror was officially off duty. Lady Mail, now styled Mistress of the Royal Mint, set up a portable forge at Festival's edge. Children queued to hammer their initials onto warm blank coins, supervised by blacksmiths who erased stray finger scorchings with lavender salve. Every clang chimed across cobblestones, and villagers swore they heard the minted silver sing, a faint rising hum that dissolved into the afternoon breeze. You tested the claim by pressing a fresh coin to your ear. There it was, a fragile cord like bottle glass tapped by conscience. You scribbled, "Currency with melody might keep thieves awake at night, but thieves are adaptable composers." At dusk, you spotted a cloaked figure gliding among stalls, dropping wooden discs painted silver into unsuspecting purses while discreetly retrieving authentic tokens, reverse pickpocketing with profit. The Jesters' laugh meters failed to detect the crime. Counterfeit silence carries no decibels. You alerted Roderick. He nodded once, vanished, and reappeared moments later, gripping the culprit by collar. The hood's eye holes stared inches from the thief's sweating face, until the man blurted that he worked for ex-treasurer Caldus, recently exiled, yet apparently still liquid in treachery. Roderick confiscated the wooden rouges and, to audience applause, sentenced the thief to perform public bookkeeping. 2 days calculating precisely how many genuine coins his trickery might have displaced. No gallows, no axe, only arithmetic, which many consider a slower death. The king arrived after sunset, escorted by lantern-bearing guards whose halberds were festooned with mercy ribbons instead of pennons. A fashion choice Wickram whispered was too pastoral for deterrence. Aldrich toured booths, tasted forgiveness fritters, and pretended not to notice that the Jesters had levied a startled gasp tax on him when he sneezed at cinnamon. He paused at the forge, where Mistress Mael presented the festival's ceremonial cornerstone, a palm-sized ingot of pure silver, engraved with crown, hood, and sprig entwined. Aldrich placed it into a chest bound for the orphanage endowment, sealing it with wax impressed by his signet and, at Roderick's suggestion, one of Mercy's retired rivets. The official highlight loomed: the night choir of coins, an unprecedented experiment arranged by you, the Jesters, and the mint clerks. Throughout the day, townsfolk had tossed their newest mercy tokens into an enormous bronze bowl mounted on the old pillory platform. At moonrise, the Jesters rang a bell carved from repurposed manacles, signaling everyone to hush. Roderick leaned on Mercy's silent scabbard. Children clung to parents' sleeves, and even the pigeons on steeples tilted heads to listen. You gave the nod. 2 apprentices upended the bronze bowl onto a silk-draped drumhead. A cascade of silver discs rained down, striking the taut fabric, ricocheting against one another in a cascading series of chimes, thousands of tiny notes, overlapping until the pitch coalesced into a single, wavering tone. The vibration resonated through the square, climbed the facades, and perched on the chapel bell, which answered with its own deep toll. A harmony, impossible yet undeniable, vibrated inside rib cages. The Jesters' abacuses recorded 0 laughter. All mouths were open in reverent O's. Still, their expressions suggested they might tax awe if given the forms. That harmony was supposed to dwindle and end. Instead, it intensified. Coins still on the drumhead began to dance, ringing against one another of their own accord, as though the mint's righteous alloy had awakened sympathetic strings in the air. Stall awnings fluttered. Candles guttered sideways. Gervas muttered a prayer. The hood tilted, listening, or calculating escape routes if physics mutinied. Then, with a metallic sigh, the tone collapsed. Every coin stilled. Silence pooled, a silence too thick to breathe. Into it, a voice cried, "Counterspell!" Someone hurled a sack over the bowl. scooping half the dancing coins, and bolted through the crowd. Roderick reacted first, a blur of cloak and rosemary. You chased close behind, quill forgotten, hands empty, save adrenaline. Thief ducked into Weaver's alley, where loom sheds formed a labyrinth of yarn-strung shadows. Each step sent shivers of silver ringing inside his sack. The noise stitched pursuit straight to him. He climbed a ladder toward the dye house roof. You and Roderick followed. Gervais blocked alley mouth. On rooftop, Thief turned. Hoodless friend of Caldus again, eyes white with greed. Mercy sings, he spat. Why should peasants own choirs? He swung sack like flail. A few coins spilled, skittered across tiles, dropping into the gutter with forlorn tinks. Roderick's hands stayed at his sides. Blade not an option, but dread travels faster than steel. He spoke one sentence. Even a silent axe leaves echoes. The thief froze, whether at words or at spectral possibility behind them. You seized moment, tackled him. Sack burst, silver scattering over slates, raining down into night like minted hail. Below, townsfolk scrambled to catch raining mercy, giggling despite themselves. Jesters reluctantly scribbled tallies. Guards hauled Thief to jail. King ordered him assigned to choir of coins. Perpetual custodian, forever counting what he tried to steal. Roderick permitted you one pun in your notes. Headsman turns headsman of hearts. Gervais groaned. Jesters find you too, laughs payable in fritters. Festival concluded with lantern procession. Citizens marched to river, tossing counterfeit boards into water, each plank bearing chalked regrets. Flames reflected off current, dancing beside rosemary wreaths set afloat for the executed merchant, and all who'd fed the block before mercy minted. Roderick watched from bridge, hood mirrored in black water. Fear will return, he said softly, but tonight we tuned it differently. You nodded, thinking of coins singing themselves awake. Before sleep, you inscribed in journal, when justice trades blade for melody, cut purses will covet chords, yet a hood listening to music may delay its hunger. Candle sputtered out. Outside the window, you thought you heard faint metallic tinkling, as though coins whispered lullabies across rooftops. Or perhaps it was simply wind rehearsing the next chapter's key. Either way, listener, let silver music guide your dreams. May it drown any distant grindstone, until dawn decides which instrument the hood must polish next. The morning after the night choir fiasco dawned with the kind of apologetic drizzle that doesn't soak so much as insinuate. Gutter mouths still jingle with forgotten mercy tokens. Children scavenge them like raindrops that had solidified, while jesters skipped through puddles, tallying every giggle on damp abacuses, claiming back taxes on delight. The festival stalls were coming down, mint furnaces cooling, and the rumor that coins had briefly sung now floated in taverns, the way pipe smoke clings to uncertain ceilings. Everyone swore they'd heard it, yet no two accounts agreed on the melody. You spent sunrise collecting these contradictions, pockets bulging with quotations, until your notebook resembled a drowned hymnal. King Aldrich awoke in a palace, humming with fallout. Lord Wickram delivered a dawn brief. Provincial lords had wired grievances, wax-sealed complaints really, that mercy coins were devaluing their personal brands of dread. Rural priests worried the singing currency might rival church bells. And, most pressing, the royal auditor of abnormalities, an office dormant since the last eclipse, had dispatched an inspection team in the dreaded black wagon. The wagon had not trundled through the capital since plague years, when it arrived to price tag mass graves for future taxation. Its return was an omen, wrapped in a ledger and tied with garnish of bureaucratic bile. You stood in the throne room gallery, taking notes, while Aldrich paced between pillars, crown askew, muttering arithmetic of power. If fear is at 12, and charity at 8, what's the exchange rate? Wickram, no help, recommended a controlled demonstration of consequence. Translation: bring back the axe, briefly, to remind everyone where real tenor sings. Aldrich hesitated. He liked adoring crowds, but not bloodstains on new tapestries. Let us consult the hood, he decided. Master Roderick arrived before the footman could finish summoning him, as though dread has its own premonition of being required. The executioner's hood was immaculate, polished to a sacerdotal sheen, but the rosemary sprig at the brim had browned, evidence that even symbolic mercy wilts quickly under logistical strain. He listened while Aldrich explained the auditor's arrival, the counterfeit scare, the possibility that Treasury lobbyists might sabotage the fledgling Mercy Mint. Then the king asked, almost sheepishly, "Do we need to wake the blade?" Roderick tapped the tip of Mercy's sewn scabbard on marble. "Steel sleeps, so the kingdom can dream, sire. Wake it lightly, and every pillow remembers." You recorded the line, too poetic to lose. Wickram scoffed. Numbers preferred edges sharper than metaphors. He produced parchment stamped with the auditor's sigil, a blindfolded abacus. The document demanded proof that the Mercy program was fiscally terrifying by sundown, or else executions would resume under state supervision. Audited for efficiency, of course. Outside, the black wagon rolled through gatehouse thunder. Wheels taller than a man, sides polished to mirror. Citizens parted as though witnessing their own misgivings approaching. 3 officials disembarked, wearing ledgers for collars and quills like weaponized feathers. They were introduced as Principal Scrivener Dace, Deputy of Balance Miss Farine, and a junior clerk named Evo, who looked alarmed by his own shadow. Their mandate: evaluate economic impact of excessive clemency, recalibrate fear index, and, if necessary, recommission execution schedule to restore market confidence. Lady Mael's workshop became the first inspection stop. Auditor Dace weighed silver content, clicked tongue, declared the coins melodically unstable, and therefore a liability. Unexpected acoustic events complicate bookkeeping. Ms. Farine demanded to see singing blueprint. Mael admitted the resonance had been an accident of alloy purity and drumhead tension. The auditors scribbled, "Serious risk of unlicensed hymnography," a charge that once shut half the cathedral choirs. Meanwhile, Motley Hugh presented the Jesters' ledger of laughter levies. The auditors frowned at entries, like one boisterous cackle, value 2/3 a carat, and metaphysical snort, collectors baffled, estimate pending. They filed this under non-fungible hilarity, thereby taxable at punitive rates. Hugh's bells drooped. Nothing kills a joke faster than Audit. By midday, the black wagon had accumulated 2 crates of irregular specimens, forged dies, wooden fakes, and even a handful of genuine Mercy tokens confiscated for acoustic analysis. Word spread that auditors might declare all coins null until further metallurgical hymns could be silenced. Panic returned to the market like an old creditor. Bakers hiked prices, citing a forthcoming shortage of affordable absolution. The poorhouse saw its bread queue triple. The forgiveness fritter stand caught fire. Spontaneously, some claimed. When a mercy coin hit hot oil and began to shriek, King Aldrich convened emergency council under cloud-marbled afternoon light. Roderick, Hood, and all sat uninvited at the table's far end, mercy lying horizontal like a punctuation mark threatening to become a period. Wickram argued for one demonstrative beheading to appease auditors. Lady Mael countered that killing would bankrupt the minted mercy narrative. The Jesters suggested satire lobbed at the auditors. Nothing deflates bureaucrats faster than a rhyme about their mother's abacuses. But nobody laughed, tax risk being high. You, lowly scribe, ventured a perilous idea. Stage a public audit of fear itself. Weigh the hood, the crown, and a mercy coin on the great scale, outside the counting house. Let auditors witness numeric parity. Roderick intrigued. Aldrich stroked beard. Wickram panicked. Scales belong to Treasury. Yet Mael supported. Let silver sing on steel's fulcrum. At dusk, the city gathered around the scale, ancient bronze device, normally reserved for tithing grain. Guards kept auditors front row. On one pan, Roderick placed his hood and Mercy's sheathed body. The pan dipped, groaned as legend weighed in. On the opposite pan, Lady Mael laid one rosemary sprig coin, then another, then stacks until silver gleamed like a moonlit pond. The beam remained unbalanced, fear heavier. Murmurs rippled. Auditors smirked, scribbling victory. Then Motley Hugh stepped forward, whispered something to you and Gervais. Together, you fetched a crate of confiscated laughter, sealed glass spheres containing recorded giggles. Jesters are nothing if not weirdly prepared. Hugh popped a stopper. A bubbling chuckle wafted into evening air, rang against shop shutters, and drifted onto the coin pan. The scale creaked, beam lifting fractionally. Another sphere opened. Snort of pure absurdity. Lift again. Children added their pocket clinks. Bakers tossed dough-flavored pennies. Widows laid down tokens bought with tears. With each addition, Jesters uncorked mirth, until Square echoed with ungoverned laughter. The auditor's quills twitched, unsure how to tax resonance, stacking upon resonance. Finally, the beam leveled, hood and blade in equipoise, with gleaming mercy and airborne laughter. Roderick raised a gloved hand. Jesters fell silent, corking the last jars. The hush that followed felt sculpted, intentional, an accounting balance drawn in breath. Auditor Dace removed spectacles, gaze reflecting both pans. It appears, he conceded, that terror and charity may coexist in measurable parity. Ms. Farine added, "We shall recommend provisional continuation of mercy issue, subject to quarterly echo reviews." Crowd erupted, half cheers, half exhausted sighs. The auditors retreated to Black Wagon, evidently satisfied, or at least numerically confused. As they rolled away, coins in confiscated crates clinked 3 times. Low, softer, content. The wagon's rear door rattled. Perhaps silver sang them lullabies for the journey. King Aldrich, relieved, declared the scale now a permanent monument. The equation of rule. Roderick leaned toward you, voice barely stirring air. For now, the axe sleeps. You noted his qualifier. Gervais winked, already plotting new broomstick and cabbage games. Lady Mael ordered another batch of singing blanks, this time tuned intentionally to a comforting chord in C minor. Midwives claim infants, like that key. The Jesters implemented a new toll. Every time someone recounted the episode, they owed a sigh or a wink. Interest paid in levity. Night deepened. You retired to scriptorium, inked the final ledger entry. A hood, a crown, and a coin, balanced once. Proof that kingdoms wobble, but need not topple. if laughter props the lighter side. Before quenching your candle, you thought you heard distant metallic humming, perhaps coins in far pockets, remembering the pitch of parody, or maybe the hood sharpening dreams against tomorrow's uncertainties. Either way, listener, tuck this balanced hush beneath your pillow. Let fear and mercy tilt gently until sleep equals silence, and the axe stays where stories need, rested yet vigilant. 3 days after the great balancing, the city awoke to find every bell tower clapper neatly removed and left on doorsteps wrapped with twine. No note, no signature, just a hush so thick the cobblestones seemed to tiptoe over themselves. At first, merchants enjoyed the reprieve. No vespers interrupting haggles, no matins to rattle shutters. By noon, however, dogs howled at the vacuum, and mothers found infants unable to nap without the distant tick of bronze tongues. Fear prowled again. Freshly shaved and wearing cologne called absence, you were summoned to the palace, along with Master Roderick and Lady Mael. In the throne room, King Aldrich studied a parcel of midnight blue parchment. Each sheet bore ruler straight columns of ink and a wax seal shaped like a closed mouth. A manifesto, he said, voice brittle. Someone calling himself the Silence Monger claims our city's new melody of mercy offends heaven. He demands we retire the coins or surrender 1 square mile of the realm to eternal quiet. As proof of power, he confiscated every bell tone. He tossed parchment. Pages fluttered like stunned ravens. Lord Wickram proposed conscripting town criers to shout double shifts. Jesters retorted that weaponized mirth required hazard pay. Aldrich pinched the bridge of his nose, eyes orbiting hope. Finally, he turned to Roderick. You balanced fear with charity. Can you now weigh noise against nothing? The executioner's hood regarded him, expressionless as ever, yet the rosemary sprig beneath brim had been replaced by a sliver of tarnished bell metal, bent into a question mark. Lady Mael suggested forging microchimes into future coins, portable bells immune to theft. Ex-auditor Miss Farine, now permanently stationed, lest parody wobble, worried about resonance embargo. Motley Hugh, representing the Guild of Jesters, claimed the silence monger must be a disgruntled former clown. Only someone who once traded in cacophony knows where bones hide their echoes. Suspicion ricocheted like an unstruck gong. That night, you accompanied Roderick through alleys patrolled by hush. Mercy remained sewn in its velvet coffin, but the headsman carried a lantern whose panes were cut from scrap lens glass. When lit, it projected silhouettes of bells on walls, ringing visually, though soundless. Dogs fell silent before the shimmering shapes. Drunks touched foreheads, uncertain whether to make the sign of the cross or the sign for more ale. Roderick left these icons at intersections like breadcrumbs for the silence monger's appetite. Meanwhile, Mael's mint hammered emergency coins with minuscule clappers captured inside. Each strike produced a mosquito-sized ding, barely audible, but undeniably real. Children traded them like secrets. Widows wore them as earrings. Yet dawn still rose without bells, and courtiers began oversleeping into scandal. On the 3rd day, the black wagon reappeared, auditors flanked by royal guards. Principal Scrivener Dace delivered verdict. Loss of bells had shaved 12% from productivity, raised price of timepieces, and worst of all, eroded fear index by 2 entire nerves. Citizens cannot dread what they cannot hear, he said. Absence makes complacency. Wickram glared at Lady Mael, as though the silenced bells were stamped with her initials. She countered, "Sound or no, mercy circulates." But a whisper spread that the singing coins were cursed, pulling voices into their silver throats. Desperate, Aldrich announced a midnight convocation. The Hood, the Mint, the Jesters, and the Auditors would confront the Silence Monger at the Bell Foundry ruins beyond the North Gate, lured by a promise to negotiate sovereignty of Hush. You, being scribe, were told to bring 5 sharpened quills, in case one breaks when history screams, Wickram explained. The procession left the city under a mute moon. Roderick led, lantern casting spectral bells that glided over fields. Motley Hugh followed, juggling 3 silence coins that pinged faintly against each other like distant stars colliding. Gervais pushed a handcart loaded with mercy, still sheathed, a spare block, and a wrought iron stand resembling a portable pulpit. The auditors clutched inkpots shaped like hourglasses, time and accountability inseparable. The foundry ruins crouched amid thistles, charred arches pantomiming bells, long sold for scrap during war. In the kiln's yawning throat stood the Silence Monger, a spindly figure in robe sewn from decommissioned choir scores, ink notes turned inward. His mask was a parchment cone painted with a single closed eye. Around him hung the city's clappers on twine strings, glimmering like gutted fish. He raised a hand. The world seemed to inhale, but refused to exhale. Aldrich stepped forward, crown dim in lantern glow. Return the bells, and we might cede you a monastery for your quietude. The Monger produced a tuning fork, struck it against his palm, vibration visible, inaudible. He held up 3 fingers, the bells, the coins, and the hood. Remove any one, and sound equity would restore. It was a ransom in algebra. Surrender mercy, or revert to dread. Auditors whispered cost-benefit ratios. Jesters hissed at math. Lady Mael shook her head, clappers in her pocketed apron tinkling indignantly. Roderick advanced until Lamp's bell shadows merged with real clappers overhead. He spoke not to the Monger, but to the metal hanging captive. "Do you wish to ring?" The clappers twitched, struck by wind or word. Roderick unsheathed mercy, gold thread snapping, steel caught moonlight with predatory purr. The Monger flinched. Parchment mask rippled. Roderick didn't lift blade. He planted it, edge down, into dry earth, converting war tool into tuning fork of its own. He tapped the lantern glass. Light bells flickered, and a shimmer of imagined peals chased cracks up ruined kiln walls. You realized the executioner was conducting without killing. Roderick addressed the Monger. A hood silences only what refuses purpose. Bells toll to measure endings and beginnings alike. Return them, and mercy will share the hour. He reached into cloak, withdrew 1 micro chime coin, tossed it so it arced and struck Mercy's blade. The coin rang, soft but undeniable. Echo bounced off kiln, hitting clappers. 1 shook, chimed weakly. Chain reaction. Another chimed, then 3, then 20. Sound built like rain on slate. Small notes knitting into thunder. The air filled with the missing voice of the city. The Monger staggered, palms to earless mask, silenced for years. The foundry thrummed awake, with ancestral memory, molten bronze ghosts, rejoicing. Roderick stepped forward, removed mask. Underneath, Ivo, the junior auditor, eyes wide with unpaid terror. He sobbed, confessed resentment at laughter levies, disdain for singing coins, craving a kingdom where numbers slept quietly. Wickram sputtered about treason, but Aldrich raised hand. Compassion or exhaustion. Penalty agreed. Evo relegated to clock tower maintenance. eternal steward of measured tolls. He accepted, relieved to manage sound rather than erase it. Roderick freed the clappers. Mael distributed them to waiting scribes and priests, like Eucharist. Each installation back in tower at dawn would require a written pledge never again to let silence kidnap civic time. Mercy slid back into new scabbard of bell-woven leather. Rosemary Sprig was replaced with a filigree clapper charm. As Caravan returned, the first tower tested its voice. A single toll, rusty yet bold. Citizens poured into streets in nightshirts, weeping or cursing, but grateful for resonance. At Council's dawn debrief, auditors signed addendum. Fear index adjusted upward by a comforting half-nerve. Just enough lace on the pillow. Jesters levied restoration roar, tax, payable via exuberant shout, fines waived for the poor because volume is democratic. Aldrich drafted edict declaring bells and coins, co-monarchs of morale, one to warn, one to soothe. You filed official chronicle. The hood conquered silence, not by swinging, but by persuading echoes to change allegiance. Mercy glinted once, yet no blood paid interest. Sometimes blades negotiate better than quills. Sometimes quills forge bells. And sometimes a king watches both and learns fractions of wisdom. Candle burned low. Outside, every clock sounded exactly on the hour, for the first time in 3 nights. A cacophony so perfect it lulled the kingdom to sleep. Rest now, listener. Let the bells ring, steady in your temples, reminding darker thoughts. There's a ledger counting each reverberation, balanced by a hood that, at least tonight, prefers conducting over cutting. And if dreams tip toward silence, picture a blade, buried edge first in soil, humming lullabies into the bones of the earth, until morning bells reclaim the sky. No one slept straight through the week after the bells were rehung. Sound had returned with compound interest. Matins told a fraction, sharp, tierce rang early, and vespers developed a mischievous offbeat that made dancers stumble in taverns 3 streets away. Evo, the newly installed clock warden, formerly the silence monger, now repentant gear greaser, chased cogs and counterweights up spiral ladders, tightening every nut until his knuckles bled copper filings. Yet the bells only laughed harder, as if they had tasted their own kidnapper's panic and found its seasoning worth repeating. King Aldrich summoned an emergency symposium beneath the great belfry. You stood beside Master Roderick, who leaned on Mercy's bell-clapper scabbard like a magistrate contemplating fines. Lady Mael had blackened half her apron, stopping her mince new chime coins from resonating in sympathetic mischief. Motley Hugh wore cork earplugs tied by velvet string, loudly claiming royalties each time a bell peal made him flinch. Intellectual property of jesters, involuntary slapstick. At the heart of the gathering stood the laughing clock, a squat iron mechanism installed centuries earlier to keep the cathedral bell honest. When the big bell rang off tempo, the clock released a barking tick that corrected the rhythm by ridicule, an elegant, if juvenile, feedback loop. During the silence crisis, the clock had wound itself far past its governor, storing derisive energy like a coiled spring of giggles. Now, every gong it monitored drove it to louder mocking hiccups until nobody could tell if time or laughter commanded the hour. Auditors, still stationed in the city, like scabs on treasury skin, argued the device was non-compliant morale interference. Wickram suggested smelting the clock and recasting it into fearsome cowls for border watchmen. Roderick raised a gloved hand. Destroy mockery, and you sharpen real anger. His voice carried enough hush to make the bell hesitate mid-peal, a wobble that jolted pigeons into awkward flight. Aldrich rubbed temples. Fine. We hold a trial for the clock. Let machinery defend itself in public forum. If it laughs at wrong moment, we condemn it to silence. Thus was set the most eccentric proceeding in royal memory. The scaffold in Merchant Square was redraped as a courtroom. The block became a witness stand. Mercy, still sheathed, served as gavel. One tap on oak table head signaled order. Roderick presided as bailiff. You acted as court reporter. Jesters formed defendant's counsel. No one else spoke fluent mechanism. Opposite them, Auditor Farine prosecuted on behalf of chronological integrity. The clock, detached from gears, but mainspring intact, sat upon an anvil like a toad stuffed with metronomes, its minute hand twitching anxiously. The trial opened at noon. Lady Maelle testified that bells were ringing truer since the clock's laughter, claiming ridicule polished honesty. Farine countered with productivity spreadsheets. Workers stopped thrice per hour to guffaw at bell-cocked chirps, costing City 7,000 loaf equivalents weekly. Motley Hugh cross-examined the concept of bread. Does rye not rise precisely because bubbles of levity expand its heart? The crowd applauded pun. Farine wrote contempt beside Hugh's name. When questioned, the clock responded by rotating minute handful circle and releasing a two-toned snicker, clang-tick-hee, echoing off facades. Roderick tapped Mercy on wood. Order. Farine demanded gag order via canvas tarpaulin. Jesters argued a silenced witness could not self-incriminate. King Aldrich, observing from balcony, signaled compromise. If clock released any more unsolicited laughter, it would pay fine equal to 1 thunder jar. Thunder jars, sealed canisters of bottled storm you last encountered during Mercy Festival, had become new barter item. Each could power streetlights for a night or frighten a tax collector into empathy. Lady Maelle produced one as exhibit, blue arcs writhing like caged indignation. The clock's escapement clicked nervously. For first time, you fancied it understood stakes. Farine introduced star witness, Farmer Brune, whose dairy cows had refused to be milked on time because Belle's mispeals confused their sunrise sense. Brune pantomimed, stumbling in pre-dawn barn, spilling buckets whenever the clock cackled. Jesters retorted with marionette cow that delivered cheese every chime regardless of ridicule. But prop collapsed when clock gave sudden guffaw. Crowd roared. Farine smirked victorious. Proceedings paused for supper. Auditors tallied laughter levies. Jesters invoiced court for spontaneous mirth. You filled 3 pages of contradictory testimonies. Roderick retired beneath scaffold to oil Mercy, edge idle, but gleaming through stitches. This blade is a receipt drawer, he said. Holds proofs no quill can file. You asked if he would truly execute an object. He shrugged. Steel doesn't ask what bleeds. Night settled. Torches haloed the square. Return session drew larger audience. Curiosity, dread, hope. Coins minted in equal alloys. Farine delivered closing argument, demanding dismantlement of clock, smelting of gears into silent tribute bowls for treasury. Motley Hugh rose, bells shimmering. He produced a tiny Mercy coin, struck it against clock's iron casing. It rang pure, a minor. See? Even laughter can harmonize with Mercy. He spun coin atop anvil. It vibrated, projecting faint chord. Clock began to hum, matching pitch. No ridicule this time. An apology disguised as duet. Roderick rapped scabbard. Verdict time. King Aldrich consulted silent debate with his crown. Paper cuts acquired from handling too many decrees had left tiny red lines across his knuckles. He proclaimed, the laughing clock would stay, but pay debt. Once per day, it must release stored ridicule into Thunderjar, swapping mockery for electrical virtue. Jesters to oversee venting ritual. Auditors to audit wattage. Any future Belknap shall be corrected by measured tick, not spite. One problem. City possessed only 2 thunder jars. More required retrieving unclaimed storms from highlands. Roderick volunteered escort. Lady Mael insisted on forging new jar lids. You were conscripted to chronicle the Great Thunder Procurement. Departure scheduled for dawn. Before dispersal, Farine approached you privately. Fear's ledger still unbalanced. Hood may enjoy holiday, but Treasury senses deficit. She hinted that consortium lords plotted revival of public punishments through engineered scarcity of Mercy silver. You relayed to Roderick. He inspected Mercy's edge glinting in lantern glow. Iron boots? Scribbler, he muttered. Mercy can walk softly, only if iron boots keep sabotage from nipping its heels. At first light, a caravan assembled. Roderick in front, Hood beneath weather cloak. Gervais driving wagon stacked with empty storm jars. Lady Mael holding blueprint scrolls. Motley Hugh hidden in crates, claiming comedic infiltration. You riding beside clock warden Ivo, who clutched tuning forks like protective charms. City gates swung open on creaking hinges, grateful for morning bell peal, announcing safe departure. Road north wound through heather moors, where thunder nests between hills like sleeping lions. Legend says executioners once harvested storms to temper blades, lightning forging edge keener than mortal whetstone. Roderick confirmed. Mercy's first owner quenched steel in rain, streaked with silver fire. Storm remembers sharpness, he said. Mael replied, then let it power humility now. Day's march brought you to High Hollow, a crater lake drained by tremor, decades prior. Storm clouds linger perpetually. Snagged in bowl of broken earth, Roderick directed jar placement on basalt pillars. Evo struck fork. Clouds rumbled displeasure. When lightning forked downward, jar's glass glowed. Filaments dancing. Motley Hugh popped lid prematurely, hoping for lightning pun. Spark singed bells, leaving smell of electrified brass. Twilight. 2 jars brimming storm, one half filled with stray mirth. After Hugh sneezed during capture, camp formed beneath jutting cliff. Roderick stood watch, hood facing horizon, where city lights flickered, faint as memory. You asked if Blade missed stage. He answered, a headsman's holiday is paid in uncertainty. He planted Mercy, edge downward as tuning fork. Distant thunder vibrated handle. Iron boots, he repeated, pushing scabbard deeper. Sleep came uneasy. Air charged. Coins in your pocket, ringing phantom. Dream. Hood dancing with bell clapper. Atop scales. Lightning conducting orchestra of clocks. You woke at dawn to rain. Jars sealed. Caravan homebound. On return, Jesters met you with ecstatic accounting. Laughter levies funded second orphanage. Bakery queues shortened. Yet Farine's warning had matured. Rumors of silver shortage circulated. Counterfeiters resurgent. Consortium nobles lobbying for stricter fear. Measures citing thunder theft as omen. King Aldrich awaited caravan in courtyard. Crown askew, eyes mapping storm jars like budget lines. He asked if thunder weighed more than dread. Roderick placed heavy jar at King's feet. Thunder weighs what justice allows. The jar pulsed blue, humming same pitch as Mercy's steel. A note knit from storm and silence. Aldrich exhaled. Then let us forge iron boots for Mercy. Orders were drafted. Mint to alloy coins with trace meteor iron for scarcity control. Jesters to host storm concerts to sell surplus wattage, auditors assigned to police consortium treasuries, and if sabotage snipped bell ropes again, the hood would step softly but unmistakably onto scaffold boards. You logged it all. Mercy's new boots, forged of thunder and iron, laughter audited, clocks on probation, candle flickered, tiny storms echo. Outside, bells rang truer. Not perfect. Their slight wobble reminded citizens that perfection hides tyranny. Roderick wiped dust from hood's brim. Rosemary sprig beginning anew. You finally slept. Coin under pillow chiming heartbeat quiet. Trusting steel to guard the melody until sunrise debates its next meter. The scarcity rumors ripened into full-blown panic by the third sunrise after the thunder jars were plugged into the city's grid. Bakers who yesterday accepted a single singing coin for a loaf now demanded 3 plus an oath on rosemary sprigs. Market criers shouted exchange rates between Mercy silver and plain copper, their voices cracking like faulty bells that even Ivo's frantic tuning forks couldn't pacify. Jesters worked overtime, levying chuckle tariffs, yet every collected giggle felt brittle, as though laughter itself had been debased along with supply. King Aldrich's council chamber became a hive of parchment stingers. Auditors produced charts showing Mercy inflation, climbing a diagonal steeper than the cathedral spire. Lord Wickram insisted consortium lords were hoarding coins to ransom fear back into fashion. Lady Mael counter-argued these nobles possessed neither the furnaces nor the good sense to forge such pure alloys. She suspected something worse. They were melting the coins and recasting them into blank discs, silent silver that lacked the tuned resonance, thereby starving bells of their new harmony. Without that song, dread could creep home, wearing a different mask. Master Roderick listened, arms folded, hood shadow swallowing candle glow. Hordes of untuned silver, he said, would sing off-key if struck. So, Aldrich ordered a midnight raid on the consortium granary, where rumor said the meltings took place. You accompanied the squad, quill tucked behind his ear, Mercy hanging in sheathed silence across Roderick's back. Inside the granary, barrels of wheat had been replaced with vats of molten metal, stirred by apprentices wearing clothespins on noses against acrid fumes. Supervisor was none other than former Mint Master Sergel, exiled but evidently unretired. When torches flashed on helmets, Sergel tried to dump crucible contents onto floor, hoping to erase evidence. Roderick caught his wrist. Molten slurry sloshed and spat fireworks, but no coin cores glimmered within. Only streaks of strange ink floated atop silver, turning the alloy a mournful violet. Lady Mael dipped iron ladle, sniffed. Lamp black with oak gall, manuscript ink. Sergel sneered. Metallurgy of information, my dear. If Mercy sings, I prefer my silver to whisper. He confessed to dissolving confiscated coins and alloying them with script so tiny none could read it. Silver would become blank, yet haunted, carrying dread of unreadable decrees. Wickram wanted immediate hanging. Roderick refused. Not Dread's day yet. Instead, Sergel was clamped in irons forged from thunderjar fragments, tiny sparks nipping his wrists each time he lied. But barrels still missing told of a larger conspiracy. Roderick convened an emergency audit of every noble vault. Auditors fanned across city, armed with portable balances tuned to Mercy's pitch. If a chest of silver failed to hum properly, its lock would be sealed by order of the axe. nobles bristled at seeing executioners seal hammered onto their treasury doors. A hood silhouette flanked by rosemary sprigs, Mercy's new crest. Some protested this was tyranny by accountancy. Others bribed jesters to teach their coffers to whistle convincing tunes. Motley Hugh earned a month of pastry smuggling secrets before Roderick shut scheme down with a single visit and a gently unsheathed inch of mercy. Meanwhile, the bells faltered. Without continuous circulation of tuned coinage, their overtones dulled. Matins now rang like spoons in thick porridge, and the laughing clock hiccuped into dry coughs. Evo flagged a royal memo. Time is losing its punchline. Bakery queues stretched. Children swapped copper imitations, clumsily hand-stamped with doodled sprigs. Panic pressed until even widows began clamoring for the hood's old certainty. King Aldrich felt walls bend. At High Council, he suggested a ceremonial demonstration. No blood, merely the axe displayed upon scaffold. To prove fear remained in reserve. Roderick disagreed. Edge shown without purpose tarnishes itself. Wickram retorted, then give it purpose. Silence nipped like winter. Aldrich's eyes flicked to you, quill poised, seeking narrative traction. What if, you ventured, Mercy were weighed publicly against the counterfeit, a tournament of metals. Whichever rang true would claim legitimacy. Loser surrendered to crucible. Thus, the day of proof was proclaimed. In Merchant Square, the great scale was re-erected, beam polished, pans waxed, so resonance wouldn't dampen. One pan would hold freshly minted coins direct from Mael's furnace. The other pan, bars of silent silver, confiscated from consortium vaults. If silent silver outweighed but could not sing, public would choose song over scarcity. If counterfeit rang true, unlikely, Mercy would willingly retire. No tyranny in melodies, proven false. Consortium lords responded by unveiling new mascot, an allegorical effigy called Temperance, forged of their violet-inked silver, wielding quill sword, claiming balance through quiet obedience. They hired troubadours to praise stillness as mature governance. Why trust humming trinkets when silence saves your ears? Their leaflets fluttered across streets, promising lower taxes once bells stopped distracting clerks. Morning of trial, sky bruised violet like Sergel's alloy. Crowd thickened, tension palpable. Roderick set Mercy on wooden support, between pans like referee's staff. Lady Mael arrived with coffer of bright coins. She poured them. They chimed ascending chord, D minor. Wistful, but steady. Consortium servants rolled carts of ink silver bars. When laid, beam dipped toward their weight. Silent metal heavier. Judge, Auditor Dace, tapped quill. Now test resonance. Motley Hugh fetched mallet padded with lambskin. He struck Mercy coins. Square resonated in shimmering overtones, dancing through Vesper's cracks. Children covered mouths in awe. Hugh then struck ink silver bar. Nothing. Just a dull thud like coffin lid, closed on empty promises. Crowd muttered. Lords paled. Hugh struck again. Faint whisper escaped bar. Words, indecipherable, hissed across dust. Fragments of royal decrees Sergel had shredded into melt. Ghostly clauses about tithes and beheadings slithered, chilling listeners. Roderick advanced, lifted Mercy. Blade reflected violet streak in bar. Edge reads truth, he said, and swung, not at flesh but metal. The impact split bar. Ink silver cracked, releasing cloud of dusty letters that evaporated mid-air. The bar's halves weighed separately now lighter than Mercy coin mound. Beam tipped. Judge declared verdict. Counterfeit disproved. Wickram demanded punishment. At least one noble head for attempted economic regicide. Aldrich hesitated. Bloodthirst optics. Roderick offered compromise. Ink silver to be recast into new bells, tuned deliberately to dissonant interval, reserved for announcing tax audits. Thus, bribery would always toll its own approach. Nobles forced to underwrite the foundry cost. Consortium dissolved in two senses, legally and physically, as their hoarded bars became molten penance. Sergel's sentence modified to oversee dissonant bell casting under Ivo's supervision. Clockwarden turned warden of wrongdoers' resonance. Farmers cheered. Bakers resumed singular pricing. The laughing clock regained giggle in moderation. Productivity charts plateaued into gentle hum. That evening, Mael minted commemorative Proof Day coins, plating thunder jar filaments onto Mercy alloy. They sang brief crackle, reminder that justice carries storm in its throat. She presented first strike to Roderick. He pinned it inside hood lining, near ear, where no one saw. Iron boots feel lighter now, he admitted quietly. You penned chronicle late, candle sputtering. Final line. When counterfeit silence stormed the city, a blade of ink split lies open, and Mercy stepped through, wearing boots forged from thunder and song. As wax pooled, distant foundry clanged new bells, raw, clashing triads that warned corruption to keep receipts. You smiled, knowing fear and mercy co-authored the score, and the hood, ever sensible, preferred co-writing to footnotes written in red. Sleep, listener, under this uneasy lullaby, bells that clash, coins that sing, and an axe that paints rather than pierces. Tomorrow, we may need all three, when paper-cut crowns bleed into parchment again. But for tonight, let weight of honest silver anchor dreams against any hush that thinks itself righteous, though kingdom's freshly tuned bells had only just settled into their new triads, three notes that rang criticism and comfort in equal measure. When a crimson-sealed letter arrived from the northern principality of Schwarzdorf, couriers, sweating under armor the color of congealed regret, delivered it straight to King Aldrich's breakfast table, knocking over the honeypot and a bowl of mint porridge, whose smell reminded me, unhelpfully, of funeral wreaths. Lord Wickram broke the seal, lips moving as he read. His complexion shifted from alarmed parchment to mortuary sheet. Schwarzdorf invokes the Treaty of Zwerkow, he croaked. They demand we provide a royal executioner to demonstrate proper punitive spectacle at their midsummer assizes, else they will levy embargo on our grain and thunder imports. Translation: the neighboring realm missed public bloodletting, viewed our mercy craze as contagious, and now wanted us to export dread like a traveling circus, complete with sword swallower, except the sword would sever throats. King Aldrich set down his spoon, examining his reflection in the honey puddle. They fear that music, he said quietly. They want to remind us their silence is older. Roderick, summoned on the spot, listened within his hood. The rosemary sprig inside brim had grown tiny purple flowers, mercy blooms if given time. But his posture, straight as scaffold timber, announced preparedness to prune them. A demonstration, he murmured. Steal abroad to preserve song at home. I suspected he minded neither road nor blades return to duty. Executioners carry vacation, like borrowed cloaks, ready to shrug them off. I, chronicler in perpetual draft mode, was commanded to accompany the envoy with quills enough to ink an international incident. Lady Mael packed crates of proof coins to gift as diplomatic curiosities. Motley Hugh smuggled jesters in luggage, claiming satire is universal legal tender. Auditors refused to leave ledgers, but agreed to join if given new, dissonant bells as hand luggage. So, our caravan rolled north. Roderick, Gervais, Mael, Wickram, auditors, jesters, thunder jars as night lamps, and me with notebooks swelling like guilty consciences. Schwartzdorf's capital squatted between black pine ridges, its streets paved with gravestones, repurposed from wars they'd rather forget. At the gate, a bronze statue of their own headsman greeted arrivals. Hood metal cast permanent, axe oversized as insecurity. Guards scanned our wagon, puzzled by bell crates humming off-key. But a single glower from Roderick parted them like pages around a marginal doodle. Duke Hermann von Schwartzdorf welcomed us in hall, lit by bare fat torches. He wore fur cloak, despite June heat, and a necklace of miniature thumbs. Rumored tokens from pickpockets. Your kingdom's dalliance with mercy disturbs my peasants, he announced. They skip work to debate theology of jingling coins. We require demonstration of austere justice to reset their compasses. He gestured to dais, where an iron block waited, dull blade beside it. Tomorrow's assize, 6 criminals, beginning with a poet guilty of metaphors about birds. His grin suggested metaphors unsettled him more than daggers. Aldrich's envoy countered with compromise. 1 demonstration only. No poet blood. Merely cabbage effigy as we'd done. Hermann sneered. Spectacle without mortality is pantomime. Your hood will swing, or your coins will starve under blockade. Wickram paled. Grain imports kept civic bakeries solvent. Outside council chamber, Roderick stood by narrow window, moonlight pooling in his hood's eye holes. Steel can end breath, he said, but cannot enforce respect if wielded for another man's cowardice. Lady Mael replied, then let mercy temper dread again, this time on foreign soil. Auditors muttered about breach clauses. Jesters eavesdropped, juggling invisible, severed metaphors. Night before assize, Gervais and I roamed market squares. We discovered Schwartzdorf's folk, not bloodthirsty, but fearful. Last drought, Duke cut off baker's ears to improve listening. Poets wrote about birds, because aerial escape appealed. Children played gallows tag. Whoever missed rung bell from defunct chapel earned mock noose scarf. Scarcity of thunder jars kept streets dark. Paranoia thrived where lamps fail. We regrouped in inn cellar, candlelight warping everyone into conspirators. Plan formed, subvert treaty by fulfilling letter, not spirit. Roderick would perform a duel. Execution against execution. Steel versus ink. Mercy would face Schwartzdorf's axe, but Edge would taste only symbol. Mael produced blank silver wafers. Auditors drafted contract. Jesters rehearsed silent mimic chase. We slept little, hearts drumming half-measure cadences. Assize square, filled with citizens whose faces looked braced for weather no forecast dared name. On scaffold, 2 blocks stood Schwartzdorf's iron brute, nicknamed Widowmaker, and our imported walnut block, polished to warm honey. Duke presided on balcony, gnawing pheasant leg. The poet, trembling in stocks, clutched serenade to sparrows. Beside him, Roderick in full regalia, hood stitched with fresh bloom and clapper charm, projected calm contagion. Wickram announced first act, proof of edge. Jester trio rolled out anvil, placed ink silver ingot Sergel had used. Roderick unsheathed mercy. Crowd gasped at moonlit flash under midday. Instead of poet's neck, he laid ingot on walnut block. Schwartzdorf's headsman, a bearish man named Ulbrecht, stepped up wielding Widowmaker, eager to show foreign executioner obsolete. Roderick invited Ulbrecht to strike first, courtesy of martial artisans. Ulbrecht swung, blade bit ingot, sparks hissed, but metal only dented, mocking. Crowd murmured. Roderick then lifted Mercy lightly, almost tender, and let gravity carry edge. Ingot split with ring like cracked bell, releasing puff of violet ink letters that twisted into word silence, then blew away. Bells from our crate answered with dissonant chord that startled ravens off rooflines. Duke scowled, his champion embarrassed. Wickram seized moment. Behold, our mercy alloy severs forged fraud, not flesh. Let justice slice lies, not lives. Crowd, witnessing spectacle without gore, cheered raggedly, some relief devouring dread. Duke called for execution of poet anyway. Roderick intervened. Treaty demands demonstration by royal executioner. I have swung. He presented ingot halves, as heads taken. Counterfeit ones. Legal scholars in audience whispered loopholes. Duke's brow creased with premature wrinkles of concession. Yet bloodlust lingered among hawkish nobles. Ulbrecht challenged Roderick to duel to first cut. Roderick accepted under one condition. Whoever lost would obey Victor's philosophy for a year. Mercy or dread. They circled blocks, blades reflecting each other. You recorded knuckles whitening on quills. Ulbrecht lunged. Mercy parried, sparks carving exclamation into air. Roderick stepped aside, letting opponent's momentum carry onto walnut block. Blade stuck. Ulbrecht tugged, but wood held greedily. Roderick tapped Widowmaker's spine, with Mercy's flat, popping axe free, yet spinning it across stage into waiting jester arms. Duel ended without wound, but symbolism carved deep. Strength redirected by calm. Crowd erupted in applause, flavored with nervous giggles. Poet fainted, spared. Duke von Schwarzdorf forced to declare satisfactory compliance to treaty. As token, he accepted a crate of mercy coins and promised to let bells sing half the week unmolested. In reciprocity, Aldrich lifted grain tariffs from northern barns. The treaty annex now read, "Justice shall be measured by song's integrity and blade's restraint." That evening, celebratory feast mixed Schwarzdorf sauerkraut with our rosemary bread. Bells, now tuned by Evo to stable fifth, tolled from cathedral rooflines both sides of border, sending chords across pine valleys. Ulbrecht, humbled but curious, spent supper fingering mercy coin like newly adopted virtue. Roderick retired to guest chamber, sitting at desk where I drafted final notes. He removed hood. First time I saw his face. Weathered map of nights haunted, but eyes clear as oiled steel. Heads roll easier than policies, he remarked, yet none rolled today. He placed mercy on table, edge wrapped in silken cloth printed with musical staff. Perhaps they'll fear quiet restraint more than noisy violence. I asked if he felt obsolete. He half smiled. Executioner is guardian of threshold. Whether threshold guards life or death depends which foot the king raises. Back home a week later, bells chanted no story of heads lost, only treaties won. Lady Mael alloyed final batch of thunder-tuned coins, embedding tiny line of parchment. Mercy wears iron boots, but dances. Auditors certified them at par value of courage. Motley Hue opened theater dedicated to silent slapstick. Laughter delivered without word, honoring lesson that sound withheld can teach as potently as sound unleashed. My chronicle ended at edge of scaffold sunset, where no block waited. I wrote, an axe can be forged from ink, a hood wielded as mirror, and kingdoms that once measured power in necks learned to weigh it in cords nobody can steal. I closed journal, sealing wax with sprig imprint, and felt a city breathe. Not calmly, but rhythmically, like a drum aware of sticks, yet unstruck. So, listener, if tonight the wind carries distant peal, half harmony, half question, know it is bells asking blade to keep tempo, and a hood somewhere adjusting bloom of rosemary, while counting how many dawns remain before terror needs another edit. Rest easy in this temporary truce. Tomorrow, history may sharpen quills or edges anew, but for one sleep at least, both hang in balance, too beautiful to sever.